And as we come on the air tonight, Sean Diddy Combs is in federal custody facing some very serious charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering. Now, earlier today, a judge shot down Combs' attempt at bail despite his lawyer offering up to a $50 million bond. Tomorrow, Combs' defense team saying that they are planning to appeal that denial of bail. And today's unsealed indictment paints Combs as the head of a criminal ring that abused women and forced them to engage in drug-fueled orgies. The charges include racketeering and sex trafficking, and prosecutors say Combs and those who worked for him engaged in kidnapping, abuse, and forced labor.
The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct.
And more details include Diddy allegedly using violence, including arson, to intimidate victims. 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant seized in the raid of his home. Videos and broken down AR-15 rifles found in his closet. And Diddy has been denying allegations since November of 2023 when ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura and 2 other women sued him for sexual abuse. Then in May, security video was released showing Combs attacking Ventura in the hall of a hotel. After the release, Combs had this to say.
My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now.
Now let's bring in NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas, who has a whole lot more. So, Chloe, a lot to process in these charging documents, some of them expected after the raids and that video that surfaced earlier this year. But can you lay out the government's case here?
Yeah, Gadi, look, I mean, I was in that courtroom today just behind me here. I'm here in downtown Manhattan. And during the arraignment today that lasted about 2 hours where Sean Combs pled not guilty, they laid out the 3 charges. So I just want to remind viewers who may have gotten little bits and pieces of this today. It's racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. So they claim that they sent out over, when I say they, the government claims that they sent out over 300 subpoenas for individuals to testify before the grand jury. It turns out they spoke with 50 witnesses, at least 1 victim of sex trafficking. They claim that during those raids, Gadi, that you just mentioned, because everybody wants to know, what did they find? Well, we know that they found AR-15s with their serial numbers scratched off, but they also claim that they found over 90 cell phones, I guess at both residences, both in Florida and in California, and that they also found thumb drives, 30 thumb drives, and that they also found videos of like these digital recordings of these freak-offs. Now, what are these freak-offs? Well, we heard about these freak-offs, which are these like elaborate sex parties that Diddy would allegedly have, and Cassandra Cassie Ventura, his longtime ex-girlfriend who filed that explosive lawsuit that sort of kicked all of this off last year, and then they settled. She talked about those freak-offs. Well, we're hearing a lot in this indictment and from prosecutors about that. They claim that Combs would drug women, that he would force them into having sex acts with men. He also claims that they would hire sex workers from other countries and then also like take them all around the United States, i.e. the sex trafficking. And then they also talk about this business enterprise. That's where this RICO charge comes in. They talk about the fact that Diddy, who is a billionaire, right? He has all of these businesses from alcohol to fashion. He has had a TV network called Revolt, that he used Bad Boy Enterprises to hide this behavior for all of these years. So I know many people are wondering, how was this kept secret in the hip-hop industry? Well, he had a lot of influence, a lot of power, and a lot of money, Gadi.
And we've been hearing so many of the allegations about these freak-offs in the past from lawsuits. But what was the reaction inside the courtroom when the defense heard that, yeah, we have evidence or we have video of these freak-offs? Was there any reaction?
Well, what I thought was interesting is that Mark Agnifilo, who is one of Sean Diddy Combs' attorneys, he said, what happens in a man's bedroom should stay in a man's bedroom. That the last thing that we need is the government interfering with what's going on behind closed doors. But when the judge actually took a recess to kind of think about whether or not to give Combs' bond, and he was offering $50 million. I mean, that is a massive bond to offer. He even put one of his homes that's worth $48 million up for collateral, Gadi. And she came back and she basically said, well, it's because I don't know what happens behind closed doors. I'm paraphrasing here, which is why I can't let you out on bail. And he was emotionless, expressionless, as the U.S. Marshals escorted him away. Now, his attorneys now saying that they want to appeal this as soon as tomorrow, and there's going to be hearing in this courthouse behind me at 3:30, and we'll see if the judge reconsiders. But as of now, he's behind bars, and he could potentially be behind bars, I guess, for up to a year when this potentially goes to trial.
And Chloe, that's one defense. What happens in a man's bedroom stays in a man's bedroom. But what else did the defense team say about the arrest?
They said that Sean Combs is somebody who is many things, but that he's not a criminal, that he did not engage in any sort of illicit activity. And they claimed that this relationship that he was in with Cassie, that it was this 10-year relationship, but that it was toxic, but that they did love each other and that they both cheated outside of the relationship, and that surveillance footage that we've seen, that damning surveillance footage of Diddy kicking and pulling the hair of Cassie in a hotel hallway in 2016, right, that CNN put out in May. They claim that, yes, that is a terrible incident. But what you don't know is that Cassie had actually allegedly hit him first and that she had taken all of his clothes. And that's why he ran out in a bathrobe. Now, it doesn't excuse the abuse, right? And obviously they have a lot of explaining to do, but they were very persuasive in the courtroom. Obviously not enough for the judge to grant him bail, but they said, look, we believe we have a strong case and we believe that we're going to be able to fight this, especially if you only have one victim of sex trafficking. Now, we don't know if that's the case, but that's what it might seem to be. Gadi?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because in this indictment, there are no names of victims, and we don't even have real numbers of victims here. But is this indictment part of the other lawsuit that Combs is facing right now, or could he be looking at even more charges if found liable in those other lawsuits? I mean, there's so much that's hanging over his head right now.
Well, I think that, what's interesting is that I'm looking at my notes here from court, that during court, you heard the government compare the situation to R. Kelly. You heard them compare it to Jeffrey Epstein and Keith Raniere, right? But, I mean, you also had Combs' attorneys coming out and saying, well, all of those dealt with children and individuals underage, and this indictment doesn't mention anything like that. I mean, on one count alone, if found guilty, Combs could face a minimum sentence of 15 years. But let's just say he was convicted on all. I mean, you could see him spending life in prison, and you even heard the judge say at one point, and death. And that's how serious this is right now.
Chloe Malas with some incredible reporting from inside the courtroom. Chloe, thank you. And NBC News legal analyst Angela Sinandella and criminal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona are now joining us. Angela, I mean, just going through this, the first 10 pages are dedicated just to the racketeering charge. Sex trafficking and then transportation are basically about a page between the two. This is nowhere near as detailed. Both of those last charges are nowhere near as detailed as the racketeering charge. Is the racketeering charge going to be the foundation of this entire case, or are they keeping a lot of things close to the vest still?
Well, look, Gadi, I actually think that all of these different charges are woven together to provide a narrative, because if you look at who's going to be judging this case, it will ultimately be a jury, right? So all of these facts that are included are going to help each charge. So the racketeering charge, which they're alleging is this criminal enterprise, which they label the Combs enterprise, that all of this was done in furtherance of this illegal activity, which ultimately was for his personal and pure gratification. What I also think is fascinating, though, is that even though there are only these three charges, the allegations and the accusations encompass so much more that are not technically charges. Things like kidnapping, arson, distribution of illegal drugs, assault, sexual assault. All of these are used to build a narrative, which I believe will be very powerful in front of a jury and not even necessarily included as direct charges. But these are very serious charges, as Chloe laid out, even though there are only three of them, Gadi.
And Bernarda, the judge denying him bond there, was that expected?
I expected that, because you have to think that the judge had to take into account what are the charges, the severity of the charges, the strength of the prosecution case, also to take into account Puff Daddy, his means, his ability to flee. But I think what hurt him the most really was the allegations that the prosecutor made that he was tampering with witnesses, that he had the potential of obstructing justice. But also, in addition to that, is that the defense's own argument backfired on him. When he started talking about the sanctity of someone's bedroom, what happens there is in private. That is exactly what the judge honed in, that any type of pretrial supervision wouldn't be able to supervise what was going on inside of a bedroom or inside of the home. So yes, we may be able to assure that he'll show up to court, because if he puts up the $48 million mansion, yes, but we can't assure that he won't be a danger to society, to the community, and therefore detention is what's the best case scenario for this case, to one, assure his appearance, and number two, to protect the community.
Bernard, I'm so glad you brought up the allegations of tampering with witnesses, because, again, that's laid out in here, but it's not one of the charges. Angela, I mean, there are a bunch of allegations of criminal activity in here, like you said, that are not in the charges. Could we see more charges tacked on here? Or, as you say, is this just going to be part of the racketeering narrative?
Certainly, there's always an option for the government to add charges, to have a superseding indictment. And I also think what's interesting here, though, is that it's almost like a Pandora's box that is unraveled from the very beginning. If we think of Cassie's lawsuit, which seems to have been the impetus for all of this, people didn't take it that seriously at the time. They said it's just a civil lawsuit. She's just maybe asking for money, and it was settled immediately. But from there, what happened? There was evidence. It also then gave other victims this power to come forward and file more lawsuits. And then the government, just almost by following this thread, was able to develop this massive case that took them so long. So I do believe that there is likely more to come. I believe that there are more witnesses and victims that might come forward, and perhaps just the power of seeing that a criminal indictment has come, that maybe this man who people thought was all powerful can fall, will then actually help the government's case with more people coming forward, Gadi.
Yeah. And Bernardo, when you read the indictment, and I know this is still very, very early on, but you consider the arguments that were laid out in court today from both sides, what do you think this whole case is going to hinge on? What stands out the most to you?
Well, number one, is going to hinge on the testimony of victim number one, that we could presume that that is Cassie Ventura, because the charges similar to what's in the civil paperwork that was filed, a civil lawsuit. But aside from that, what I'm going to be looking forward is to the electronic evidence, the surveillance, the videos, the phone records, the phone surveillance. Also, who's cooperating against Puff Daddy, because obviously his inner circle has broken that seal in order to give viable evidence to this prosecution to go forward with this indictment.
Yeah, who may flip? Obviously, a huge question there. Thank you for joining us tonight. For more on this, let's bring in our MSNBC contributor Yvette Dion, who wrote a fascinating piece on what she says is a culture of complacency that created the environment for Combs to allegedly carry out these charges. So, Yvette, before we get into all of this, we've been talking about all kinds of different charges and different timelines here, but you lay out a very extensive recounting of all the lawsuits against Diddy, not just what we're talking about today. So let's just reset real fast with what happened once Cassie came forward with her allegations.
Yes. So once Cassie came forward with her allegations, if we recall, that was November of 2023. It was a civil lawsuit. It was settled the next day. In the aftermath of that, there have been several lawsuits filed, not only against Diddy, but also against other people within his inner circle. So the allegations range from sexual harassment and intimidation to sexual assault and coercion, all of which has led us to this moment where it seems as if there was a parallel investigation happening at the same time that these civil lawsuits were being filed.
We also saw in Don Richards' lawsuit, there was allegations about who was on payroll and how things might have been covered up. And that kind of speaks to some of what we're seeing in this indictment today. What picture emerges there?
Absolutely. So we actually have Don Richard's attorney, Lisa Bloom, who spoke about the indictment today.
Like many alleged victims, Ms. Richard, suffered in silence for a long time. Mr. Combs is a very powerful individual, and it's very difficult to come out against someone like Mr. Combs. But it was seeing Cassie file her lawsuit and go public that really gave her a sense of empowerment, that it was her turn and it was her time to come forward with her allegations.
So what we see, particularly with this case, Don Richard's case, is that it's a continuation of the allegations that Cassie made against Combs. And so we see that he had a powerful inner circle, or an alleged powerful inner circle, that worked together to really insulate him from accountability. So the indictment, as well as Richard's lawsuit, both point to having people, including personal assistants and house staff, people who were a part of his record label and other businesses, flying people in, allegedly providing them with narcotics to ensue compliance from them, and forcing them to participate in what this indictment is calling freak-offs, and then insulating him from any accountability. So the video that was released, particularly of Combs assaulting Cassie, it's alleged in this indictment that an employee at that hotel was paid or attempted to be paid off to prevent that information from going public. And so it just points to this continuous cycle that enabled him to continue to allegedly operate with impunity.
And we did see, so we saw the Cassie lawsuit, we saw the Cassie video come out, we saw Richard's lawsuit, and then we saw the raids of the house and the seizing of all of that evidence. And now we're hearing some of the evidence in there, and the prosecutors saying that they have video. They have video evidence of these freak-offs. There are a lot of people that are asking why it took so long, if this evidence was seized and if these allegations have been out there for quite some time.
From what I understand and from what it seems, as I mentioned, it seemed as if this investigation was happening at about the same rate as these lawsuits. And so once Cassie came forward, it seemed that other people felt compelled to come forward as well. And it allowed evidence that had previously been hidden away, that was not made public, that people really kept with them for many myriad reasons. We now see that they feel comfortable enough to come forward in a way that allows federal prosecutors to prosecute this case. So we're less than a year from when Cassie filed that lawsuit, and we're at an indictment point, which means that this investigation moves slowly, but also moved pretty quickly at the same time.
And today we're also hearing a lot of comparisons between this case and R. Kelly. What stands out to you as being the same and being different in these two cases?
Well, I think that they all exist on a spectrum. So we, of course, have the R. Kelly case, we have the Weinstein case, we have the Bill Cosby case, which was eventually overturned. And what they all point to is the corruption of influence and wealth and power and fame that prevents people from being held accountable until decades have passed. And so the fact that New York State passed this law that allowed victims of sexual violence to pursue civil damages against the person they've accused of assaulting them, the fact that they're able to do that years after it has happened has allowed the floodgates of this to open. And so both what R. Kelly and Diddy have in common is that this happened for decades without accountability from their inner circle and other people within their lives. And now the accountability is able to come forth because of the passage of new laws.
Yvette Dion, thank you. And thanks again for that opinion piece. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, this system may not have hit North Carolina as a tropical storm, but it did some serious damage there. And now the flood threat seems to be moving towards Virginia. NBC's Bill Cairns is going to have our forecast. Plus, deadly exploding pagers across Lebanon today. Why Hezbollah is pointing fingers at Israel for the attack and what we can expect next in that region. And later this hour, we head to the depths of the ocean in Puerto Rico to see how scientists are working to save coral reefs. You won't believe how these little sea urchins may be the key to that mission. Stay tuned.
A lot of scientists all over the world are experimenting, making corals that are more resilient, more resistant.
Hey, Welcome back, and here's some of the headlines we're watching tonight. Miley Cyrus has been hit with a lawsuit alleging that her Grammy-winning song Flowers copies a portion of a Bruno Mars song. Now, both songs contain mentions of flowers and holding hands, but take a listen for yourself.
I can buy myself flowers, write my name in the sand. I should have bought you flowers and held your hand.
The company suing Cyrus, Tempo Music, owns a share of the copyright from When I Was Your Man. Tempo Music is seeking damages that could include $150,000 per infringement. And today, the FDA expanded their approval to a drug used to treat metastatic breast cancer. Now, it could be used to treat patients with earlier stages of the disease and can help prevent it from coming back. And in its trials, the drug reduced the risk of patients' breast cancer coming back by 25% after 3 years and nearly 30% after 4 years. And that news comes just as a new study says that black women are 40% more likely to die of all forms of breast cancer than white women. Researchers say a lot of factors such as delays in diagnosis, inadequate access to quality treatment, and systemic racism could be to blame. And after a brief hiatus, Hawaii's Kilauea volcano is erupting again. You could see a little lava there and lots of smoke. USGS says the eruption resumed in a remote area of the national park. Officials say there is no threat to life right now, but communities there could experience some volcanic gas emissions. And Jimmy Carter is getting ready for his 100th birthday in a few weeks. But tonight, a special celebration concert to honor Carter's love for music is taking place at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. The B-52s and a long list of other artists across all genres are set to hit the stage in just a few hours. And just 2 days after what the FBI is calling an apparent assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, the former president just wrapped up a campaign town hall in Flint, Michigan. He spoke about a wide range of topics there, from auto production to immigration and obviously what happened at his golf course on Sunday.
A few days ago, we had an incident. I have to say, Secret Service did a hell of a job. They really did. These guys do a great job. Now, they do need more people, and they've been complaining about that for a long time, but he did a great job.
As you heard right there, Trump and Republicans are demanding more security for the former president after Sunday, all as the Secret Service is back under fresh scrutiny. Meanwhile, the suspect, Ryan Roth, is being held at a federal prison in Miami. Right now, he is facing 2 federal gun charges, but more charges could be coming. NBC's Dasha Burns has more.
Yeah, Gadi, well, the former president just today brought the sheriff's deputies to Mar-a-Lago who apprehended the alleged gunmen who were in charge of shutting down the I-95 and bringing him into custody. But you're right, the former president and his team are asking for increased security. The U.S. Secret Service has said that they are giving him the highest level of protection, but President Biden has asked to ramp up resources and has called on Congress to take action as well. But there is a debate within Congress as to how to handle the Secret Service situation. Some are asking for more transparency from the agency, which has been under scrutiny, especially since that first assassination attempt on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. The second attempted assassination, of course, now putting the microscope and putting the spotlight even more strongly on the agency. Now, the acting director of the U.S. Secret Service said that he wants to change the paradigm of how they approach security in this particular climate, but he says that the methods right now are indeed working. The former president and his running mate, J.D. Vance, have been taking a different tone this time around than they did back in July after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. I can tell you in the aftermath of that first assassination attempt, there was a bit more of a call for unity, a bit more reflection from the former president in his tone. That's not the case this time around. Pretty much immediately afterwards, very quickly afterwards, the former president began to point fingers at the Democrats for their rhetoric, particularly President Biden and Vice President Harris. The campaign recently sent out an email with a long list of quotes from President Biden, from Vice President Harris, and other Democrats. Most of those quotes claiming something along the lines of that the former president is a threat to democracy. For context, though, Gadi, that is a phrase that the Trump campaign and the former president himself have also used to point the finger at Democrats, at Harris and at Biden. So it's a complicated conversation about rhetoric, while at the same time investigations are very much ongoing, including from the state of Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis announcing today that Florida will hold its own investigation into what happened on the golf course. Gadi?
Meanwhile, it looks like Vice President Kamala Harris is turning a page on her media strategy, sitting down for more interviews with different media outlets. Now, she took part in a fireside chat with a group of black journalists today, just over a month after she declined to attend the NABJ conference because it clashed with the funeral of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Now, Donald Trump, on the other hand, did attend that conference where he famously questioned Harris's racial identity. Today, Harris slammed Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance for promoting unsubstantiated stories about Haitian immigrants and said that she talked to Trump about that apparent assassination attempt.
I checked on him to see if he was okay. And I told him what I have said publicly. There's no place for political violence in our country. I am in this election and in this race for many reasons, including to fight for our democracy. And in a democracy, there is no place for political violence.
Well, let's bring in NBC senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez to break this down. Gabe, it seems like Vice President Harris is ramping up those media appearances after getting blasted for not talking to the press enough. How are those going?
Well, Gadi, actually, I wouldn't go that far. Look, her campaign has long said that she would do more media appearances after the Democratic National Convention. She's been doing a few more, but her critics still say that's not enough. She did have that CNN interview a few weeks back. She spoke with a local TV station in Philadelphia last week. Still, not a ton of media when you consider the election is less than 50 days away. But look, her team insists that she's reaching voters in other ways, face-to-face events, more and more social media videos. And also, later this week, she is scheduled to participate in a live-streamed event with none other than Oprah. Got it.
Gabe Gutierrez, I don't know. You, Oprah, I'd rather talk to you. Vice President Harris, she weighed in as well on the Springfield, Ohio story just a little while ago, a little after Republican Ohio sheriff seemed to urge people to start collecting addresses of people that were displaying Harris wall signs. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, well, look, the Harris campaign hasn't commented specifically on that particular sheriff, but on the Springfield story more broadly, yes. The vice president today gave her most extensive comments on that so far in the panel interview that she mentioned, the National Association of Black Journalists. She called it hateful rhetoric and said elected leaders have a responsibility to watch their words. Listen.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. When you have these positions, when you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning, especially when you have been and then seek to be again President of the United States of America.
Here at the White House, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre today referred to the debunked claims in Springfield as, quote, filth and dangerous. Got it.
And Gabe, lastly, and I hate to even bring this up, but there's a new Morning Consult poll out today that shows Harris soaring to a 6-point lead over Trump. But we all remember what happened in 2016 with polls, right? So Clinton back then, very sizable lead. That's not at all how the election turned out. Is this a reflection of momentum, of reality, or maybe just like a repeat of the past?
Not just 2016, actually in 2020, right? The outcome was a lot closer than polls had indicated back then. And look, critics of polling say they often undercount Trump supporters in rural areas. And that's one point. The second one is that 6-point lead nationally really doesn't matter much because what's really critical is the battleground state breakdowns. And those are extremely tight, Gadi, well within the margin of error. So even though she's the sitting vice president, the Harris campaign insists that it's running this race as an underdog, albeit an underdog with a whole lot of campaign cash, Gadi.
Yeah, we shall see. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. And North Carolina is reeling from some catastrophic rain and flooding, all brought on by a tropical system that didn't even have a name but packed a huge punch. Now, forecasters are calling Tropical Cyclone 8 a 1-in-1,000-year event, bringing life-threatening flash flooding and dumping more than 2 feet of rain in 12 hours, leaving parts of coastal towns underwater, as you see right there. Roads collapsed, all taking people's cars with them.
This is a tragedy. Somebody's truck, the road has collapsed completely down in there.
All that flooding led to dozens of rescues after people got stuck on washed out roads. Some saying they have never seen flooding this bad, even in a hurricane.
The weather just kept getting worse and worse, and the rain just kept coming. I've never seen it come up this fast, this quickly.
I've been here 23 years from New York, and I've never seen anything like this, even after hurricanes.
A lot of people saying that they haven't seen anything like this. NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now. Bill, I know you were tracking a lot of this stuff. Pretty wild, though. Is the flooding threat there gone? And what are the concerns tonight?
In those locations, it is. And by the way, there were 2 spots that had over 20 inches of rain. And for those 2 points exactly, that was a 1-in-1,000-year flood event. The rest of the area was more like a 200 or 500-year flood event. It each depends on each specific point. But, you know, we can expect stuff like this. You know, the precipitable waters, a fancy term for how much moisture can be held in the air. And because of climate change and the warming planet, the air can hold more water. So we're getting more of these events like this. And then even tonight, this storm is actually still spinning here over the upstate of South Carolina. If you look here on the coast of North Carolina, heading into southern Virginia, Kill Devil Hills, this area has been in extreme rainfall rates over the last couple hours. Flood watches continue as some of this heavy rain will shift northwards throughout the rest of tonight. And I want to zoom in here. So this is the Outer Banks. There's Kill Devil Hills here. And you can see, I can put my hand over the last hour, when you're under like thunderstorms like this with the bright red, that could be 2 to 3 inch rainfall rates. And we are getting reports of flash flooding from the Corolla Fire Department. They've said there's about 1 to 2 feet of water on the roads there. You know, the Outer Banks, if you've ever been there, is a narrow strip of land. It's pretty flat, and so you really can't get out of the way. You know, if the rain is coming down that hard, it's difficult to move, and you're pretty much stuck where you are. Later on tonight, some of this rainfall will be heading northwards. We don't expect, extreme flooding, but isolated areas of flooding. Then as we go through tomorrow, kind of get here and spin some showers and storms. It's going to be less concentrated. So that's why we don't have flood watches continuing. But even to the north there, we'll get a few. And then, Gadi, we've got some pretty insane thunderstorms that have been rolling in from the foothills into the plains. Earlier today, we had an 80-mile-per-hour wind gust in New Mexico. We've had numerous 50 to 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts in Colorado. It's, Denver to Pueblo to Boulder, you're now safe as this is heading out into the plains here of Nebraska and Kansas. But a lot of extreme weather and a lot of differences around the country depending on where you live.
Yeah, just another reminder that on any given day, anything can happen. Yeah. Bill Cairns, thank you. And coming up, a special night in the sky, the rare celestial event happening in mere moments, and so the significance behind all of it in the future of everything. But first, you got to see this. Atlanta police are looking for these 2 robbers who dropped through the ceiling at a local check cashing business. You can see the first fall through the ceiling tiles, threaten the business manager, and then the second robber comes in through the ceiling. Police say this happened earlier this month, and they're still looking for those robbers who got away with more than $150,000 in cash. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world today. Russian President Vladimir Putin is ordering his army to be increased by 180,000 troops, and that move would make it the second largest military in the world with 1.5 million active soldiers, right behind China. Meanwhile, in Brazil, a televised debate gone wrong when one of the mayoral candidates for Sao Paulo hit another candidate with a metal chair. That candidate was immediately expelled. Although that moment was insane, the rest of the candidates kind of seemed to carry on as if nothing happened there. And in China, U.S. pastor David Lin has been freed from jail. He has been behind bars since 2006. The U.S. government called the charges of contract fraud completely bogus. The State Department says Lin will see his family for the first time since being detained, and his daughter Alice telling reporters they've got a lot of time to make up for. And finally, American gymnast Jordan Childs is appealing to the Swiss Supreme Court to get her bronze medal back. Why Switzerland? Well, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, who made the decision that stripped her of her medal, is actually based in Switzerland. And in her appeal, Childs says that their initial decision violated her right to be heard. And there was chaos in Lebanon today after pagers exploded across the country, killing 8 people and hurting more than 2,700. Hezbollah reportedly said the pagers were distributed as a form of communication between their group and as a replacement to cell phones. Now, the Iranian-backed militant group is pointing fingers at Israel tonight, blaming them for the blasts. And NBC international correspondent Raf Sanchez has more.
Gadi, truly extraordinary scenes playing out across Lebanon tonight. This is like something out of a spy thriller. Here's what we know. Around 3:30 p.m. Beirut time, Hezbollah says hundreds of pagers worn by its members simultaneously exploded. So you had Hezbollah members walking down the street, in a supermarket, on the back of a motorcycle, and at exactly the same time, their pagers blowing up. This caused just widespread panic all across Lebanon. The Lebanese Public Health Ministry now saying around 2,700 people were wounded, 9 people killed. That includes several children, according to Lebanese authorities. And we are seeing Lebanese hospitals just overrun, emergency rooms full of people who have these identical injuries, deep gashes on the sides of their bodies from where these pagers blew up, either clipped to their belt, in their pocket, in some sort of side bag. Now, Hezbollah is saying they have no doubt that this was the work of Israel's intelligence services. We asked the Israeli government. At this point, they are refusing to either confirm or deny their involvement. But this did come just a couple of hours after Israel says it foiled a plot by Hezbollah to assassinate a former senior Israeli security official using a landmine. And of course, this comes after what has been nearly a year of fighting across the border between Israel and Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran. It was very interesting that among the people wounded today, according to Lebanese authorities, was the Iranian ambassador, who apparently suffered superficial injuries as a result of one of these pagers going off. Now, the question is, assuming it was Israel for a second, how did they do it? I spoke earlier to former CIA Director John Brennan. He said his best assessment is that Israel somehow got into the supply chain of these pagers before they arrived in Lebanon, planting some kind of small explosive before allowing them to be delivered. And the question folks might be asking is, well, how come Hezbollah is using pagers and 1980s, 1990s technology? The answer is that Hezbollah believes that Israel, with its incredibly sophisticated electronic surveillance capabilities, is able to hack into smartphones. And so they believed pagers were actually the safer option. But it turns out that these pagers used by their militants turned out to be tiny bombs exploding all at once earlier today. Gadi.
Raf Sanchez, thank you. And terrorism expert and founder of Cloudburst Technologies, Evan Coleman, joins us now. Evan, you just heard Raf mention there that the supply chain may have been infiltrated. That's what's been said in many places right now. But is that the only likely scenario here?
I mean, there are only a couple of different ways this could have been done. Like, at a certain level, it's pretty clear that there was some kind of triggering mechanism, right, in the form of malware or in the form of some kind of exploit, which caused the phones to start, the pagers to start, getting very hot, and that's triggered something. But if you look at the force of the explosions in these videos, it doesn't seem like the force of what you see there corresponds to just a device exploding because of the battery. It looks like there's something else going on. And if there's something else going on, it means that someone put explosives in the devices before they were delivered, right? At the scale that it is, it's not possible that someone went to individual operatives and then put something in after they were delivered. It had to happen before they were delivered. So assuming that there was some kind of explosive in these devices, yeah, I mean, it was within the supply chain. This was very sophisticated. This is a historic breach of Hezbollah security. I think probably the most serious that in recent memory, that's for sure, for certain. And it really underscores the reach that the Israeli government and security services have, especially, in the wake of what happened in Tehran with the killing of the Hamas Politburo head Ismail Haniyeh just weeks ago.
And officially, the IDF has neither confirmed nor denied this. So hypothetically here, I guess, if it was Israel, will they ever admit to it, or is their playbook on these kind of things, like the assassination you just mentioned, kind of like, let's just stay silent on this stuff forever?
Look, I mean, it's hard to say for certain, but you do have to ask for the Israelis, what is the benefit of claiming responsibility here? I mean, I just don't see what the benefit is. The message is very clear. The message was received very clearly. There's no ambiguity. And I just, for them to come out and say, we did this, I don't see how it serves their purposes at all. So I would say most likely not. They're looking to try to avoid provoking a direct conflict with Hezbollah and Iran. Certainly, coming out and publicly saying we did this is not a great way of avoiding a conflict with Hezbollah. I think kind of being silent about this and just kind of doing what they felt like they needed to do is probably more in line with their strategy of tit for tat, but not going all the way.
Yeah, especially in light of the collateral damage we saw. I mean, we saw 8 people died, 2,700 injured. Do you think that in the planning of this, whoever was doing it was considering collateral damage?
I mean, they had to at the scale we're talking about here. I mean, so far the casualty count now is up. Actually, for the day is up to 12. Hezbollah has acknowledged up to 12 of its fighters. Never mind anybody else. Just that its fighters have been killed so far today. So I mean, yeah, I mean, you at this scale, this number of people, given the fact that, as you saw in video, some of these people were in markets and whatnot, there had to be a consideration. There could be collateral damage. Although we don't know at this stage how much explosive was used and what the proximity was in terms of lethality and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it does, and it seems that there were, in fact, collateral casualties.
Regardless of whether or not we see a claim of responsibility for this, what kind of retaliation do you think we could see from Hezbollah?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's what can they do more than they're already doing, right? There's already all these drone attacks and missile attacks that Hezbollah is launching. They are trying to carry out attacks on the border, targeting Israeli troops on the border. They are cooperating with insurgents in Yemen who just fired a ballistic missile at Tel Aviv. I mean, the question is like, what can you do more than that without ramping it up into a full-scale war, which I don't think anyone really actually wants. So it is a bit of a mystery. What are they going to do here? It's not clear if and it's the same thing with Iran, right? You haven't seen a response yet from Iran for what happened in Tehran, and the question is why not and when, and are we waiting for something that may never happen?
Yeah. A lot of questions there, especially when we're talking about things that no one saw coming. Evan, thanks so much for joining us. And we've got a lot more ahead tonight. Up next, coral in crisis. We are diving into the race to save coral reefs, what's driving the threats of bleaching and toxic algae, and inside the research that's aiming to bring the coral back to life. That's in tonight's Future of Everything, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. And we all know that social media can be a minefield of negativity, and that can be especially true for young people. Well, tonight, Meta is introducing new features designed to help keep children safe, and NBC's Savannah Sellers has more.
Hey, Gadi, so this is the latest step from Meta to try to make teens safe on their platforms. The question is, though, is it enough? And also, how will it be enforced?
Tonight, Meta rolling out Instagram Teen Accounts, a feature with built-in restrictions for users under 18, like default private accounts, so teens have to accept new followers, messaging restrictions, and time limits prompting breaks. Meta says users under 16 will need parental permission to opt out of these settings, but enforcing this could be a challenge.
We've built new technology to try to identify people who may be misrepresenting their age.
How confident are you that you can identify a teen's age properly?
This is one of the big challenges for industry. There's no sure-proof way to verify somebody's age. We ask for age when someone joins the platform. We use signals to ask teens to then verify their age.
Because if a teen is able to say that they are older than they actually are. They could, in theory, escape all these protections.
We anticipate that some of them will try to do that, which is exactly why we've built these mechanisms.
This comes as Meta's been hit with several lawsuits alleging the company is harmful to young people. Meta says parents will now have more control. They'll be able to see who their teens are messaging with and even block access to the app.
For parents who aren't convinced that this is enough to keep their teens safe, what do you say?
Well, we've been consulting with parents for many, many months, and it's our sincere hope that they will find that these answer their biggest concerns, these protections. But we will be taking continual feedback from parents.
Also, there's so much conversation, right, about the dangerous content that teens come face to face with on these platforms. Meta says for these young users who are on teen accounts, they will not be recommended certain content, think sexually suggestive content or content that deals with self-harm. And in some cases, they'll hide it from them altogether. Gadi?
Yeah, we hope that those important conversations continue. Savannah Sellers, thank you. Now, heat has been in the headlines week after week this summer, and it's often called the silent killer, and it has claimed countless lives and made millions of us miserable. But what is happening to air temperatures is also going on under the surface of the ocean. A beautiful yet vital resource is taking a beating. And tonight, NBC's Mara Barrett is here with a slice of hope.
Coral reefs are essential for fisheries, tourism, not to mention protecting against coastal erosion and storms. They also help develop life-saving treatment for leukemia and other diseases. But they're under threat, so I went on a research dive to see what's being done to help.
It's 6 a.m. off the coast of Puerto Rico, and Dr. Stacy Williams is on a rescue mission, preparing her scuba gear and plenty of waterproof bags before she and fellow scientist Katie Flynn dive in to save precious baby sea urchins called diadema. My producer Jackie and I secured our cameras.
We're ready to go see some diadema.
And dove in right behind them. Their mission, clipping these lines of squares of astroturf-esque material where hard-to-see tiny baby urchins hide, clinging on for their literal life in this underwater science lab.
So they're not able to either settle or survive settlements. The really tiny babies are eaten.
Swimming along underwater with them, and a surprise barracuda, it's easy to tell why. With bags stuffed full, we resurface. The water, almost uncomfortably warm, was impossible to ignore. And that's the problem. Not just here. Sea surface temperatures around the world are breaking records nearly every day. The North Atlantic, for example, is currently on average warmer than any other time on record. That rippling underwater heat places stress on these colorful colonies, robbing them of their trademark color and places them at risk of dying off.
We just got out of the water, and it's hot today. The water itself is 86 degrees, just a few degrees more, and that's when coral enters the risk zone for bleaching.
On top of the bleaching risk, toxic algae thrives in warm water, threatening the coral even more. But Issa Caribe's research shows that these urchins are nature's own cleaners for the coral.
They're like the goats or the cows of the sea. We've seen a significant reduction in both fleshy, bushy, seaweed to encrusting seaweed that can actually overgrow and kill live coral tissue.
Her team rushes the tick-sized baby urchins to their one-of-a-kind land-based nursery.
Keeps everything alive and looking well.
Here, they're nurtured in tubs, set up like bunk beds, alongside faded and bleached coral fragments in need of recovery.
When they lose that color, they basically lose most of their nutrient intake. The skeleton becomes weak and it becomes much more susceptible to disease.
It sounds like this lab operates mainly as a nursery, but also as a rehab center.
I like to call this like a very fancy hotel, so we make sure we come here and they're in the best conditions they can be in.
A lot of scientists all over the world are experimenting, making corals that are more resilient, more resistant.
Their research in Puerto Rico is unique when it comes to materials.
Living on an island, we are constrained to what is available and also our budgets.
Forks for maneuvering the urchins carefully, a turkey baster to keep their coral hydrated, and livestock troughs for tubs.
Our nurseries are actually on solar. We need to keep these animals alive. We've come up with ways to use these materials because running these type of facilities is very expensive.
Once both the urchins and coral have grown a bit and are healthy, they're ready to go back into the ocean. We helped the urchins nestle into their new homes and saw the researchers' success firsthand. Replanted corals settling into the reef, and full-grown adult diadema urchins effectively keeping them clean. Their strength working together showcased underwater to protect life on shore.
As someone who's an avid scuba diver with deep respect for everything that lives in the ocean, this was such a fascinating assignment. The other thing I found intriguing, these researchers in Puerto Rico have developed a consortium to help inspire and map out blueprints to help other marine labs around the country. Back to you.
Hey guys, right now, as we speak, a sort of rare celestial event is happening. That's right, we're talking about the lunar eclipse, or partial lunar eclipse, as is in today's case. It started about 10 minutes ago, but the peak is in 2 hours. And remember, a solar eclipse like the one that happened earlier this year happens when the moon passes between the sun and the earth, causing a shadow on the surface of the earth. But a lunar eclipse is the opposite. It's when the earth falls in line between the sun and the moon, casting a shadow over the moon. And depending on the kind of lunar eclipse it is, it could look just like one of these. But tonight's moon isn't just any regular moon. Tonight's moon is being celebrated by millions of people around the world by nearly a dozen names. It's also known as the supermoon, the corn moon, harvest moon, barley moon. Buddhists celebrate Madhu Purnima. Hindus mark the end of the Ganesh festival, and a lot of Asian countries are marking the Moon Festival. And here's to celebrate with us and to teach us a little bit more about this phenomenon is astrophysicist and friend of the show, Dr. Paul Sutter. He's also the author of How to Die in Space, a journey through dangerous astrophysical phenomena. Okay, Dr. Sutter, thanks so much for being with us here today. I want to talk about how rare this is. I get new moons and full moons, but tell us about what we're going to see tonight.
Yeah, what we're seeing tonight is a lineup of 3 different cycles. One is the fact that it's a full moon, which happens roughly once a month. That's pretty common. The second is that the orbit of the moon around the Earth is not a perfect circle. Sometimes it's a little closer, sometimes it's a little further. And when it's closer during a full moon, we call that a supermoon. So it's a few percent brighter and larger than average. So that's the second coincidence. And then the third is that, like you said, right now the Earth is passing between the moon and the sun. So we are casting our own shadow onto the moon and causing a partial lunar eclipse. So we get all 3 at the same time. A coincidence like this happens once every few years or so.
And sometimes we see it turn super orange. Is that what we're going to be seeing tonight? And how does that happen?
Yes, during a total lunar eclipse, the moon passes within the center of Earth's shadow, and it looks the darkest, and that's when we get this deep blood red moon. We're not quite there. This is only a partial lunar eclipse. So what you'll see at its peak, which goes right around 10:45 p.m. Eastern tonight, if you look at the moon, it will look dimmer and darker than normal, and then one little piece of it, you might see some little bit of red, depending on how clear your skies are.
And is this celebration that we're seeing all across the world? I mean, is this all for the same type of thing, or do all cultures have a different phenomenon that they're respecting and that it just coincides that all of it's happening today?
Right. What all these cultures around the world and cultures, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, have celebrated for millennia is this full moon that is the closest to the autumnal equinox. So this is the period we are entering the harvest season for the Northern Hemisphere. We are entering fall. We are entering winter. This is the nearest full moon to it. And so cultures would mark this and celebrate this as a harvest festival, as a harvest season. We're talking Europeans, Middle Eastern, India, China cultures all across the Northern Hemisphere do this. The fact that it's also a supermoon and a partial lunar eclipse is an added bonus.
And real fast, if you can't get out quick enough tonight, when's the next time we're going to see this?
The next time we'll see a lunar eclipse full moon, it's going to be a few years from now.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul. That does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.